equivalent to almost an entire trip around the world, traveling along the Earth's equator.
Speaking of the satellite, it is safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is the pointed cone on the very top of the rocket. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Now, once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. While Mr. Steven, our ship, will not be supporting today's mission, we do plan to recover the fairing pieces from the ocean using our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Pursuit. And lastly, you'll notice the tall structure next to the rocket, which we call the fixed service structure. Its primary function is to provide passengers access to the Crew Dragon vehicle during crewed missions. But since we do not have any passengers aboard today's flight, the fixed service structure does not have a role to fill. Now let's check in on how the countdown is going.
Good Thursday afternoon. I'm John Innsbrucker, the Falcon Principal Integration Engineer at SpaceX. We are T-minus 10 minutes, 28 seconds from the launch of the Falcon Heavy. As I like to say in my updates, the SpaceX team is working no significant issues and is on time for launch. Now, Falcon Heavy rolled out to the pad with the payload early Wednesday morning and went vertical about 6 hours later. Now, after yesterday's scrub, the vehicle remained vertical on the pad. The pad deck was cleared at about T-minus 8 hours to begin today's hazardous operations. Just before we began the webcast, the SpaceX launch director polled the 9 members of the launch team and got a go for both propellant loading and for launch. Now, we're currently loading propellant on all 3 first stage boosters and the second stage. Now, our propellants are an oxidizer, liquid oxygen, and a fuel, kerosene. Why did we pick these 2? Well, obviously in space there's no oxygen needed to support combustion. So we bring our own as liquid oxygen. It's readily available and it supports efficient combustion. We chill it to get it as dense as we can in order to maximize how much we can load onto the rocket. Our fuel is RP1, essentially a purified kerosene. It is safe, easily available, has a lot of history. The Saturn V first stage flown from this very pad on the moon missions used liquid oxygen and kerosene. Now on the spacecraft side, the Arabsat 618 began transfer to internal power at T-minus 21 minutes, and just a few minutes ago they completed that. They are go for launch. Now for tonight's mission, we're using the Falcon Heavy to place the satellite into an orbit with an apogee near 90,000 kilometers. This is much higher than the apogee of a normal geotransfer orbit. With this higher apogee, it is more efficient for the satellite to maneuver into its final geo orbit. The range is currently green. They are prepared to support today's mission. And for the weather, the good news is the upper altitude winds are much lower today, so both ground level and upper altitude winds are go for launch, no worries there. Now, as Jesse mentioned, we did start the day with a 2-hour launch window. However, now that we are into LOX loading, we don't have the ability to hold the countdown. If there is an issue in the last minutes, there isn't enough time in the window to stop, reload the cold liquid oxygen, and still launch today. There is a backup date, though, this Saturday, April 13th at the same time. Now, as I've said before, launch is hard, and Falcon Heavy is no exception. We are essentially counting down 3 rockets simultaneously. So the SpaceX team is going to be conservative in case